Hello and welcome back, Shark Heroes, to another episode of Deep Dives with Sharks. My name is Alex, the guy who gets your episodes out to you at minimum at least a day late, if not even longer. So, quick little update. I always have those, of course. After running polls, which I do those as well, and trying to give people what they want, the shark heroes are a little bit divided. So, this is going to be another three shark episode, but I am going to swap between doing three shark episodes and episodes that have shark safety and news. I'm also going to throw in some analysis from time to time. Every time I run the polls, people tend to like a little bit of all three of those. So, I honestly thought that there'd be one that stuck out a lot more than the other, and I'm not sure which one I thought it would be. But just on top of it, you guys seem to like a little bit of all of them, so I'll kind of try to give everyone a little bit of what they want, which eventually might turn out to be a problem, but we'll find out in the future. For right now, we're kind of juggling it okay. I also do want to do some sort of like aquarium reviews, but I don't know if that would really fit in as much. And simply just because I go to a lot of different aquariums, whenever we're in a different city, I try to see if they have one. And I'd want to discuss which sharks they have there, how active you should expect them to be. So nurse sharks would be more hanging out on the bottom. Meanwhile, whale sharks would be swimming around the entire time. And also what experiences you can have with those sharks and other animals as well, such as behind the scenes tours, feeding experiences, and in some cases, you can also go diving or snorkeling with them, which is wild. So I'm going to run a poll again because, they let me know what you guys are thinking. It'll be on Spotify, on the Discord, and also on the Instagram. So it'll all be there. And it's going to go for about 2 weeks. So probably going to end around January 24th or 25th of 2025. So we'll see how that turns out. Now, you may also be wondering if I put an episode out last week, why we have one this week. And that's because last week's was late, as I mentioned. So I'm forcing myself to be a little bit more consistent and stay on schedule because it's supposed to come out every 2 weeks on Friday, and sometimes it'll be a little bit late. But I'm going to also try to be more consistent with that, just so that way you guys can know what to expect. Which also can't wait to start off the next episode by apologizing for being late again. And it's kind of my signature at this point, and in true fashion, this one's out on Saturday rather than Friday. But that one was more of a technological issue because I recorded this last night at 10:30. I went to upload it, and I got an error message, and when I clicked OK, the page refreshed, and the episode was just gone. And I looked everywhere on the files that my laptop, on the website that I use, and it just is nowhere to be found. And at that point, it was late, and I did not feel like doing it again. So here we are, Saturday morning. We're recording it. We got this. I did also make a YouTube, and I also have like a page that just has all my links to everything. So the YouTube, Instagram, Discord, everything like that. Anything that I kind of say that I'll throw a link for it in the description will be what I throw in here. Just so that way you guys can get a nice, easy place to find everything and not have to try to figure out which links to click to get where. It'll just be right there and tell you that. So that should be in the description of this episode as well. Of course, you can follow along on Instagram, YouTube, Twitch. We're kind of everywhere. If you look up Deep Dives with Sharks and it's not on there and you want it to be, then let me know and I'll try to get it on wherever it is that you guys would like it to be. But I have mentioned that part of the reason why I started this podcast was because I would share too many shark facts with my friends, and I couldn't keep track of all my shark facts. Well, two of the sharks we're talking about this episode are easily two of the sharks I shared the most facts about. So for those of you that knew me in college, I'm really sorry you're going to hear about these sharks a little bit more today. But without further ado, let's jump into the first one, which is going to be the lemon shark. Now, I asked you guys a while ago to request this shark, and you guys came through. I love these little goobers, and I'm going to pour my heart and soul into this. So to start, the lemon shark was first discovered in 1868 by Felipe Poe. Now, the lemon shark got its name because they have a yellow color to them, which compared to the typical gray. So they're not completely yellow. They're not as yellow as an American zebra shark or an Australian leopard shark, which are the same shark, by the way, and I covered them in episode 1, which is a shameless plug. But they are more yellow than a nurse shark, which looks a bit more purplish. Now, lemon sharks are usually 2.4 to 3.1 meters or 7.9 to 10.2 feet long, although the longest lemon shark caught was 11.3 feet or 3.43 meters and 183.7 kilograms or 405 pounds. The lemon shark's head looks rather similar to a black-tip reef shark, but they're bigger and slightly different. The head is flat with a rounded nose, their nostrils sit rather central on their face, and their mouth appears wide but is rather average, which sounds like the most backhanded compliment. Like, nah, they don't have a big mouth, it's just aggressively average. Thanks, dog. Gonna cherish that one forever. Now, they do have two dorsal fins, and they are about the same size. One is dead center on their back, and the other hits about the three-quarter mark on their back, perfectly in between their front dorsal and their tail. Their fins do appear to sit further back than other sharks, but that could just be the angle of the pictures I saw because everything else didn't really mention that their fins are any further back on their body, their pectoral fins, I'm saying, than any other shark. So, I could just be seeing things. Now, the lemon shark does utilize its ampullae of Lorenzini to hunt at night and detect electronic pulses emitted by their prey, so they don't have to rely on eyesight in low light. And you can see some of those, they're like the little black freckles they get around their nose. Now, these sharks tend to be found in the Atlantic Ocean more than the Pacific, but they can be found in New Jersey all the way down to Brazil. So, U.S. down to Brazil, which includes the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, and can be found in Baja California in Mexico, down through Central America, as far as Ecuador, which is not including the Galapagos Islands, but they do get out to Sal Island in Cape Verde. So, they are both in the Pacific and the Atlantic, but their range goes a bit longer in the Atlantic. Now, they tend to like shallower waters, such as reefs, mangroves, bays, and river mouths, although they have been found to go as deep as 92 meters or 301 feet in the open ocean. They can go into brackish water, but they tend not to go in too far into the fresh water, preferring not to throw off their salinity balance. Bull sharks are one of the ones that like to go a bit further and can maintain that salinity balance for a while longer, and they can even stay in there for years. But lemon sharks, they need to stay a bit more closer to the salt water. Now, the lemon sharks prefer to stay in areas that have rocky or sandy bottoms as they give fewer places for prey to hide, unlike grass, areas that have seagrass in them, which can be very thick and more difficult to get through. It also allows the smaller fish to navigate through that easier, which allows prey to escape a bit easier. Often, lemon sharks will spend long periods of time in mangroves because they like the root systems that can provide cover for their young and also as a breeding ground for their prey. So, it kind of creates an essential buffet for these sharks, which who doesn't love a good buffet? Now, they'll stay there for a long while, causing them to be a shark to break the stereotype that all sharks are opportunistic predators, as they would have left the mangroves pretty quickly as soon as the food became unavailable. But instead, they stuck around for a while as the vibes were just a little too immaculate. Have you ever hung around the mangroves? It's really peaceful. It's calming. It's nice. I get it. I've paddleboarded through them before. It's just chef's kiss. But just, mwah, it's perfect. Now, these sharks have a somewhat selective diet. They eat smaller sharks, birds, crustaceans, benthic organisms, bony fish, rays, catfish, mullet jacks, porcupine fish, and cowfish, which doesn't sound very selective. That's quite a list. But they don't target fish that are fast and can get away easy. They prefer fish that try to utilize camouflage to hide, or those that are stationary while foraging. So they'll kind of just be hanging out in place. They're just easier to get, and lemon sharks aren't necessarily built for speed. They're rather agile, but they're not quite the speediest guys. Mako's got them very beat on that one. Now, they hunt in a very interesting way as well. Rather than trying to move to get a clean bite and trying to get ambush tactics, they seem to go more for confusion. They will fly in at their prey and stop quickly, keeping momentum, and then they jab, taking multiple bites until they get a good hold where they will shake their head to remove a bit to eat. So they kind of come flying in, pull up, and are like, oh, gotcha, and then get them. Like, just kind of bite them. It's interesting. Now, when they finally get a piece that they can consume, they will cause a feeding frenzy because they like to stay in groups. So all their family and friends are now involved as there's blood in the water, which, as many of you know, blood triggers the shark's hunting instincts. So they'll smell that blood and then they'll kind of just go crazy for it. Now, a quick side note, researchers found that several pieces of the same stingray were found in the stomachs of several lemon sharks, which was identified through DNA or something similar, of course, but my brain immediately went to, oh, stingray puzzle, before actually thinking about it. But, sometimes the ADHD brain gonna ADHD, and that's just kind of funny. I don't think any researchers were reassembling a stingray after they were dissecting sharks, but, it's fine. Now... As mentioned, these sharks do not enjoy being alone. They like groups and prefer the buddy system. This helps with hunting, safety, better communication, and the males can, of course, work on their game with the ladies, or as the kids say, they can enhance their riz. And after that line, this podcast is definitely canceled. I appreciate y'all listening. Cannot wait to get roasted for that one. And you know, don't hold back. Appreciate you guys. But we will power through regardless. Now, these groups can be as large enough to include 20 individuals and often are based on size of the sharks. So, unfortunately, there's a height requirement to vibe with different lemon sharks. But fret not, short kings, because there are downsides to these social groups, such as creating an environment in which parasites and diseases can be transferred rather easily, and it creates more food competition. So sharks don't really look out for each other when it comes to food. Their predatory instinct just kicks in, and it becomes more of a what's mine is mine, and what's yours is also mine. So the next point is one of my favorite facts. I would tell people all the time when I was in college or working as a bartender, and that is that lemon sharks give live birth, which means that lemon sharks have belly buttons, and that is just exciting. Many sharks, as I mentioned, are ovoviviparous, which means that they will have eggs that hatch, and then once the yolk sacs gone, the belly button tends to start being less noticeable. You can also notice it in a puppy's belly button, when they're really young, but then as they get older, it's like harder to see. Kind of goes same with the sharks. So when it's a newborn pup, you can see the belly button really well, and it's just really cool. But they do give birth in the mangroves, which aids in protection, and they will typically give birth to up to 18 pups, although usually a lot less. They are targeted by fishers for a variety of reasons. It includes its meat, fins, skins, and all for commercial uses. Overfishing is the biggest threat to lemon sharks, as there has been a large decrease in the lemon shark population over the past 50 years, and that's been about a 50% to a 79% decrease, which is rather alarming. That's got to hold up a little bit or let up a little bit because that could be very concerning if not. Now, when it comes to interacting with humans, they do interact quite a bit being in these shallower waters. They're also one of those sharks that do tend to get a lot of tourism around them. But one thing I will say is that there have been very few bites. There have only been 11 unprovoked bites, and none have led to anyone's death, which one thing I haven't discussed in a little bit is unprovoked versus provoked bites. An unprovoked bite is when you're kind of just hanging out in the water and you're doing really nothing wrong and a shark just bites you. That's an unprovoked bite. Provoked bite is we've seen videos of people messing with sharks doing things like that. I think the worst I saw, or most deserved, I'll say, was a nurse shark that was chilling in its cave, and this diver just grabbed it by the tail and pulled it out. Thankfully, nurse sharks are very much more flee than fight, so it just swam away. But if you keep pestering it, it will bite you, and that's a provoked bite. So essentially, if you don't mess with a shark and get bit unprovoked, if you're messing with the shark, it's provoked. So just a quick little rundown there. Now, a rather fun thing about lemon sharks is you can find so many videos of these guys being curious of so many different things, especially alligators in Florida. One of my favorites was a juvenile alligator just chilling on the surface of some deeper water, and there were 4 juvenile lemon sharks just circling him, trying to figure out what he is, and you can see him getting a little bit closer. They're not exhibiting any sort of aggressive behavior, just kind of circling, looking in, getting a little bit close to get a look, and the gator's just hanging out, and one got a little too close and like touched his foot, and he like jumped at him to be like, it's kind of like when something touches your foot in the water, you jump, you're like, what in the world? And all the lemon sharks at once just scattered, and it was kind of funny and really neat to see. But definitely something to look up if you guys can find that, because there's a whole bunch of these little lemon sharks messing around with people and looking at different things. It's kind of fun. But that's what I had for the lemon shark. I do appreciate you guys requesting them a lot, because that was easily my most requested one. I think after that episode, everyone and their mother put the request under the episode. So I do appreciate you guys very much for that one. It's been a lot of fun to look into. Now, getting into the next shark, this shark's been very special to me for a few reasons. It's going to be the spinner shark. And the first shark fact I used to always share, and I even put in my man of honor speech at my sister's wedding, was that spinner sharks got their name because they spin while hunting and breach the water. which is just such an easy one to quickly pull up and remember. It didn't matter what state I was in. I could just be like, oh yeah, by the way, spinner shark get their name because they spin, and people be like, oh, cool, yep, that's really it. And yes, I was the man of honor at my sister's wedding because we're tight like that, and also we all agree that the world needs more shark facts. So give me a mic, and I'll start spitting any shark fact that comes to mind. I did also set her up, and I get to ask, what's the three largest sharks? By straight up adding in my speech that I can almost guarantee she can tell you the three largest sharks because I've told her a million times. Be sure to ask her at some point tonight. And then gave a nice thumbs up. And she did, in fact, get them correct. And by the time she got over to my table to say hi to everyone, she hit me because she'd been asked 6 times. And I want to thank the crowd at her wedding for doing that because that is hilarious to me. But anyway, spinner sharks have been confused for black tip sharks, as they do have a bit of black on the top and ends of their fins. Now, it's also not to be confused with the blacktip reef shark, as I just tried to say, that are a bit smaller than blacktip sharks, and they do have other differences, but we aren't talking about either one of those today, so they don't spin, so we're just going to leave them out of it for right now. Now, spinner sharks tend to grow to be about 2 meters or 6.6 feet and can weigh around 56 kilograms or 123 pounds, although some have gotten as large as 3 meters, which is 9.8 feet and 90 kilograms or 200 pounds, which altogether is not that large of a difference between their average and max sizes when compared to other sharks that will have usually a few feet or meters and a couple hundred pounds. They only have an extra meter and about 40 kilograms, which still is a big size difference, but not as much as, say, the great white would have. Now, these sharks are rather slim. They almost resemble the body of a thresher shark minus the long tail. Their dorsal fin is short in relation to the rest of their body. Their pectoral fins are a bit longer and they're sickle-shaped, which means they have a little bit of a curve to them. Their nose gets on the pointier side and longer than most sharks, and their eyes are on the smaller side, which the description of these guys kind of just sounds a little bit like a roast session. I swear they are beautiful sharks. I'm not just trying to pick on them, even though it sounds like it. But the differences between other sharks, it's just they have a lot of slightly different things about them. Now, they do have about 15 to 18 rows of teeth in their upper jaw. They'll have about 14 to 17 rows in their lower jaw. Their teeth are narrow and have fine serrations in the upper jaw, but are completely smooth on the lower jaw. So spinner sharks are mostly gray with some black spots speckled around them, but especially on the tops of their fins and the tips of their fins. These black bits on their fins become more prominent as they age, as the juveniles do not have any black on them. These sharks are also very agile thanks to the shape of their fins that help to cut through the water. Compared to the triangular shape, when you have a little bit of curve to it, it helps to get less resistance. They form schools based on age and sex because, got to keep the kids cool and also stop any spread of cooties because, gross. But jokes aside, the juveniles do actually prefer cooler water temperatures, but they move to warmer waters as they age. Spinners are found all around the world, including North Carolina down to the northern bits of the Gulf of Mexico, the Bahamas, Cuba, Brazil down to Argentina, North Africa down to Namibia, the Indian Ocean, South Africa, Madagascar, the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, India, Java, Sumatra, Japan, Vietnam, Australia, and they're believed to be in the Philippines, although the Philippines have not confirmed sightings at this point, so strong maybe for there. When looking at parasites found on the sharks, it can be determined that spinner sharks do pass through the Suez Canal. And I'm not trying to point any fingers here, but y'all remember that ship that got stuck in the Suez? Well, I would also hook a sharp left turn if I saw spinner sharks just twirling out the water, and I'd definitely run ashore. So, I can't say I'd blame them. I gotta go watch that. That's just cool. Now, spinner sharks can spend their time around depths about 100 meters or 330 feet, but they often prefer shallower than 30 meters or 98 feet. But they're found all throughout the water column in between, mostly, of course, between 30 meters and up. They also migrate within the seasons, often moving with the warmer waters. Unless they're juvenile, then they'll chill in the colder waters, but still not too cold. They're not about that ice cold life. They got to talk to the Greenland sharks about that one, but they'll stay a little bit more northern than the adults, so that way they can keep their body temperatures just a little bit cooler. The spinner shark often eats smaller bony fish, but quite a few of them will also eat 10-pounders, sardines, herring, anchovies, catfish, mullets, lizardfish, bluefins, tunas, bonito, jacks, croakers, tungsoles, and mojaras. But they'll also hunt stingrays, cuttlefish, octopi, and squid, which, side note, shark here is, you have to look up a cuttlefish. If you do not know what that is, they're these little freaky little cute dudes. They're probably my favorite sea creature other than sharks. They have little squiggly pupils, and they can change color. You got to look them up. They're really neat. They got little tentacles on their face. Oh my gosh, I love them. But anyway, to go a little more in depth about how these sharks get their name, they will often find a school of smaller fish. They'll approach from below, similar to what a great white does, kick it into top gear, and then they just start rotating while flying through the water column and just biting like a chain chomp from Super Mario Bros. 3. Because they often aren't very deep in the water, the momentum will send them into the air, still spinning, thus showing those wonderful images of them spinning through the air. They are highly intelligent around Madagascar, as they've realized that the shrimp trawlers will easily lead to free meals. They'll toss bycatch overboard, which can often lead to a feeding frenzy, which lots of feeding frenzies on this podcast recently, which is pretty neat. When it comes to reproduction, these gals are rather similar to the lemon sharks, as they also give live birth, which means we've got more shark belly buttons. Woo! The spinner shark gives birth to about 3 to 20 pups, which is an insane range, so to narrow it down a little bit, the average is anywhere between 7 and 11. The size of the pups depends on the geographic location, as pups born in the northern Atlantic range between 66 to 77 centimeters, or 26 to 30 inches, while pups in Tunisia, they'll be between 61 and 69 centimeters, nice, or 24 to 27 inches. But in South Africa, the pups are around 60 centimeters or 24 inches. Being short, I clearly was not born in the northern Atlantic. Might have gotten a few more inches if I was, but of course my selfish parents gave birth to a human baby in a hospital instead of in the ocean. It's ridiculous. But spinners typically live to be about 15 to 20 years old, which sounds kind of short, but is rather long considering the lifespan of an anchovy, for example, is 7 years if they're lucky, but usually it's about 4 years or less. So spinners get about, 3 times as long as an anchovy, and get absolutely wrecked anchovies. You go great on pizza sometimes, I guess. I don't know. Now, these sharks pose very little threat to humans, as there have only been 16 bites, with one being provoked. So they do kind of act out a little bit, but very, very minimally. Usually you'll see a lot more provoked than unprovoked, but none of the bites were fatal, same with the lemon sharks. Spinner sharks are hunted for their meat and are sold in the U.S. as blacktip shark, as blacktips are seen as higher quality, which is just messed up for a variety of reasons. Now, recreational fishers also enjoy catching spinner sharks, as they tend to put up a good fight, often leaping out of the water, and because of all this, they are listed as vulnerable, but could become endangered if not monitored, which, what is super cool? Not eating fish or any animal that is vulnerable to extinction. I mean, there's plenty of options that are more sustainable than fishing for sharks. Plus, sharks are cartilage, which doesn't stay together well, from what I've heard. And I also got to take a step back here, or I'm going to go on a 90-minute yap about protecting sharks, which, it works. So, I mean, guess if I was an animal, you'd call me a yappy-bera, like a capybara. Anyway, the jokes are always terrible here. So, that is what I have for the spinner sharks. Which I really enjoy doing both of those. But of course, we're not quite done there. We've got one more for you guys. We've got the Edestus shark, which, getting you two of my favorites. Now it's time to give the shark here as a little freaky guy. Well, maybe not very little because they were rather large, but believed to be about 22 feet. Anyway, the Edestus is an extinct fish that researchers have debated whether or not they are sharks, but they are close enough for me, so that works out. Now, these guys are similar to the helicoprion that we discussed a few episodes back, as they both have tooth whorls, which are just wild. And the tooth whorls are the little spiral things, so the shark that looked like it had a saw blade on its jaw. So, yeah. But the helicoprion had those spirals, but the Edestus has tooth whorls that look more like someone placed a stick of dynamite in a dolphin's mouth and then inserted cartoon physics, so its upper and lower jaws got blown backwards towards its face. I'm very glad we don't have tooth whorls as humans, because they just feel like they'd be really hard to manage and maintain. Now, these sharks existed around the late Carboniferous, which is now the United States, United Kingdom, and Russia. The similar issues arose for trying to recreate the Edestus that did when researchers tried to recreate the helicoprion, as nobody saw these guys when they were alive, and cartilage doesn't really hold up unless it's under the right circumstances. So we don't really have a skeleton or a structure to go off of. We're just kind of putting things in places and hoping it's right. Now, initially, scientists had the tooth whorls as defensive structures for the fins, but they realized that then the shark didn't have teeth. So when creating the structure, they then tried putting the teeth horizontally in the mouth, kind of how you'd see in most sharks and in humans. But then they realized that it didn't line up correctly unless they were placed more vertically, coming from like front to back in the mouth. Thus giving the current structure of how we believe they went together. Now, they do look rather goofy, like we think Greenland sharks or Pacific sleeper sharks look odd, but oh boy. So, for starters, those tooth whorls stick out of their face a bit. Their eyes are set further back, and they are quite wide. They had one dorsal fin and a set of pectoral fins and a tail, from what researchers have recreated. They believe that they may have been brownish or gray, but I mean, they could have also been neon pink. There's no evidence to suggest neon pink at all, but once again, you and I weren't there, and I can dream. Dolphin fans get pink dolphins. I want a pink shark, so maybe it was. Some of the recreations also have these guys being a rust red, so there's a lot of different colors these guys could have been. Pick your favorite. It is believed these sharks could grow to be around 22 feet or 6.7 meters long, so, kind of big. So big, in fact, that scientists believe that it may have been the largest marine predator to exist at that point in history, which is worded in such a weird way. It almost sounds like your buddy Steve grabbed a beer and went, the great white could have been the largest ocean predator ever. And when you question him on it, he just goes, well, were you there? Do you live in the ocean? I don't think so. And he's got a pretty good point. So, maybe it was the biggest one up to this point, or maybe it wasn't. No one was there, but it could have been, because 22 feet, especially back in before the Megalodon, you get a little bit of a benefit of the doubt there. Now, there have been very few of these fellows found, as only 13 have been found until 2019, when researchers, marine biologists, and paleontologists came together to go, nah, 9 of these 13 aren't valid. There's only 4, which is insanely low and incredibly close to us not knowing that these sharks ever existed. Now, the first tooth whorls were found as a partial found by Joseph Leidy in 1856 in Muskogee County, Oklahoma. But wait, there's a 150-year drama, because a year earlier in 1855, Edward Hitchcock presented a fragment that was found in Park County, Indiana. But at the time, it was identified as a fin spine, so there's still a lot of debate whether it was a fin spine or if it's actually part of an Edestus. It's wild that at this point we had 4 legit Edestus parts, and in the 1850s, dudes were arguing over who found it first and if they're even real. Now, another tooth was found in 1866 by John Strong Newberry in Posey County, Indiana, but not to be left out of discovering this new species, our boy John Strong Newberry joined forces with Amos Henry Worthen in 1870, which just sounds like a dude who created a bunch of candies. Famous Amos and Werther's, anyway. But dude, in the 1800s are so wild. There's just so many people coming out with shark parts. It's weird. But not to be left out, England had some discoveries by Edwin Tully Newton in 1904 that he described because he also did not have the Edestus pieces with him. He stated he found the pieces in the coal measures in Staffordshire, England, which England, I'm really sorry if I just mispronounced that. I should be able to. I'm pretty sure it's like Staffordshire or something like that. He was able to produce a partial tooth that did not have an apex or crown, but, it worked for them and it'll work for me. Now, here's where things get real exciting, because Oliver Perry Hay brought out the first pair of upper and lower tooth whorls in 1912 that were found in Lehigh, Iowa, which brings us to the end of the findings in the U.S. and takes us over to Russia, as in 1908, remains were found near Kolomna, which is near Moscow, and in 1912, Alexander Karpinski produced a specimen from a quarry in Moscow. Now, the tooth whorls were initially classified into 2 categories. Either they were asymmetrical, where the top or bottom jaw would hang over a little bit, so you'd either have an under or an overbite, or where they were symmetrical, where they'd line up pretty perfectly, which kind of goes to show, even in prehistoric times, there was a class struggle among sharks who could afford orthodontics and those who could not. So, some things never change. Some people are just going to be stuck with jacked up teeth, and it's unfortunate. But unfortunately, there's not a whole lot we know about the Edestus. Same thing with the Helicoprion. We really can't go out here and say what they ate or anything like that, because there's even less known about them than the Megalodon. So they're trying to figure it out. Of course, same thing with all the sharks that I do research on. If anything comes up in the future, I will very much try to get that updated in Corrections Corner and things like that. But that's what I have for this episode. Thank you once again for everything. I finished the research for this episode at 1 a.m. So I'm really sorry if a lot of this didn't make sense. I feel like it was kind of coherent, and then woke up early this morning to record it. So, everything's fine. But follow along on all the social medias and everything there. Give us a like, hit subscribe on YouTube, give a follow, give us a rating. Anything that you can do to interact really helps to get this out further, because a lot of people have asked before, what's the best way to show support? And right now, that is just telling your friends about it. Dropping a like or a comment, let me know something new that you learned, or letting me know something I may have messed up, letting me know how to correct that. Of course, give us a rating and take care of each other, be kind to each other, and give yourself a little grace. Thanks for watching. Take care.